Thank you, Ana. She's absolutely right. I have here my president-elect tag that I just ripped up. Okay, well, before I begin, I would like to warn you that at the end of my talk, there will be a special number, and I will ask you for your patience with a few more minutes after I finish. I hope you enjoy this ride. Someone removed my speech from here.
Hola.
You must have some of those empty. You see,
Hola. It's a gift. That's all I can say. It's just a gift.
You'll have to outlive it.
Okay, great. For my next trick.
Okay. Paraphrasing Oscar Wilde, living may be seen as one very long moment. Accordingly, I will only demarcate phases in this long moment I have been fortunate to experience. I will illustrate different aspects of it, emphasizing some elements based on their relative weights. A note of caution. Let us just keep in mind that Winston Auden says in his selected essays, every autobiography is concerned with two characters, Don Quixote, the ego, and Sancho Panza, the self, as it is clearly depicted in this photograph, taken of all places in Cologne, Germany, last year. This speech is not an exception. Origins. Mexico City, one of the world's largest human concentrations, inhabited as far as 12,700 years ago, is my birthplace. The city of palaces is also the land of Nezahualcóyotl, Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz, Benito Juárez, and Emiliano Zapata. I was born in a middle-class family formed by two medical students, whose graduations from the National University of Mexico were postponed until I was about 5 years old for my mother and 10 years old for my father, who after a successful medical career also became a lawyer with a doctoral degree and practiced medicine and criminal law for several years. Strong Catholic principles were imbued in me by my mother. You see her here with all her younger siblings in a very small village in Mexico where she was born. But my father was mostly a free thinker. During my 6th grade of elementary school, my father moved our family 800 miles southeast to his hometown, a mountainous 702,000 feet high place in the state of Chiapas. And this is what gave rise to this shield of the state, which is depicted here. This is a colonial, small and beautiful city, San Cristobal de las Casas, in that state. You see the cathedral and St. Cristobal, St. Christopher. So I moved from this huge city with all the accompanying opportunities and turmoil of the metropolitan capital for a small and sleepy town of about 60,000 people. The transplant elicited a sort of acute cellular rejection and a parallel graft versus host reaction in the form of numerous fistfights with classmates and local kids. For a few years, I spent a lot of time very close to my parents, who ran the 30-bed public hospital, where I saw and learned a lot of practical medical issues, from applying injections to helping suture wounds in the frequent casualties of accidents suffered by indigenous peoples riding in open trucks and buses in the mountainous region. In my first year of high school, I was expelled from a Catholic school. I won't confess why. And I was sent to work with my grandparents who ran 3 butcheries in the local city market. I would go to buy cattle with them, sometimes riding a horse with my grandfather for a day. That's my granddad with his gun on the side, and my grandmother and my great-grandmother. Then we will bring the cattle, I will help slaughter it. My first autopsies were really in bovine corpses. And then cut and sell it in the market. That is why I handle the knife well. This is the market, and this picture is taken a few months ago in San Cristobal, and that's exactly the same butchery that I spent a year cutting and selling meat when I was about 15 years of age. Later, I restarted high school back in Mexico City as in a military room and war school, and I really needed that discipline. Medical school and premature parenthood, not premature birth. In 1976, I took the admission test for the medical school, shown here, and in November of that year, I received my acceptance letter. Exactly the 10th of November. On the 13th, there was a little complication, just a small twist. The same day I got the letter, Margarita, my first daughter, was born. So I began medical school a few days later, but months before that, I had started working as an assistant for a TV culture show in order to put food on the table for my extremely young family. You see here my sister and my first 2 daughters in the house that my father gave us to live in. My second daughter was born during my second year of medical school, and my son in my 4th year. By the time I graduated as a young doctor in December of 1982, my children were 6, 4, and 2 years old respectively, and they are visiting my father here. During my first year of medical school, I wanted to become an internist, following my father's preferences. I left my TV work and joined the Department of Human Histology in the Faculty of Medicine of the National University, after a competitive course for academic instructors. This job, in which I remained escalating the academic ladder for 13 years, allowed me to work within medicine and not in an unrelated field. There, I met Joaquin Carrillo Farga, a highly influential individual in my life, and later a close friend, one of the best pathologists I have ever known. You see him here at the center, and I am sitting at the top here, exactly. There I also met my closest friend and classmate, Dr. Eliezer Masia, an academic monster that last week, but I haven't checked recently, had 886 publications, who recently was appointed director of the National Institute of Aging at the NIH. As a member of the junior faculty in histology, I was able to choose my professors, and I took the course of pathology, choosing as my professor Dr. Rui Perez Tamayo. You can see him here and here, sitting at the table, sharing some scotch with me in my house in Pittsburgh. Rui is undoubtedly the most important individual in my academic life. At the end of my pathology course, Rui invited me to join his research lab, and I spent a couple of years extracting collagen and running electrophoresis. We were chasing the collagenase. A true mentor, not a tormentor, he continued to guide me, honoring me with his friendship. Rui is the most important academic pathologist, scientist of Mexico, and one of the most important figures in academic pathology of our times, admired by prominent figures of our discipline, including Juan Rosal, Francisco Gonzalez Cruzi, Javier Arias Stella of the Arias Stella phenomenon, Antonio Cubilla, the late Guido Maino, and the recently departed Horacio Oliva, among other giants. You can see them here. I am at the left with Dr. Ayala from Yale, Horacio Oliva, Cubilla, Juan, Arias Stella Jr., and partially Arias Stella Sr., and then again Rui and Juan. Rui is also the only living pathologist I know who has his bust displayed in front of a public building. Residency years. In 1983, I started my residency in pathology, but the financial and emotional pressures of that period were too heavy a burden for the mother of my children, my wife then, who suffered a new and definitive nervous breakdown and left home again, this time for good, during my second year of residency, leaving my 3 children who stayed with me. And this resulted in a very busy and difficult period. My residency in pathology was, again, under Rui's directorship. This is the group of residents that, some of the group of residents, a few of them, I am there, Eliezer is there, and some others, Rui is in the center, at the unit of pathology in the General Hospital of Mexico City. And this is a museum that is now displaying many samples that we prepared and started with Rui in the 60s. My first one-year rotation was through the National Institute of Pediatrics. Yes, you heard well. An entire year of pediatric pathology, where I had the fortune of working under Eduardo Lopez Corella and his wife, Cecilia, I'm sorry, this is a hepatoblastoma. This is Cecilia and Eduardo Lopez Corella in a bar close to the hospital and in Mexico. Every hospital should have a bar close by. Both of them were residents under Rui, and they headed the premier group of Mexican pediatric pathologists. You can see many of them here. I am at the far left, and many of them are included here. And those are Joaquin Carrillo again, Betty De Leon, the recently departed Gabby Brown, and Pedro Pascal. Before that first year of residency, I had spent an internship year with them doing pediatric autopsies and performing research projects. So I had 2 full years of training in pediatric pathology. During my second year of residency, I moved to the public and largest hospital in Mexico City, the General Hospital, where I joined Rui and his wife, my dear friend and professor, the late Dr. Imgar Montfort. Also, a friend who shared with me many books. I joined them teaching the undergrad course of pathology to medical students from 1984 to 1990. Then, in September of 1985, a major tragedy that influenced my career struck. Mexico City was hit by 2 powerful earthquakes on 19 September 1985. They were 8.1 and 7.4 points in the Richter scale. For reference, the big San Francisco earthquake was 6.9. And they killed many people, thousands. Conservative estimates mention 40,000 fatalities. They destroyed a large part of the hospital infrastructure of Mexico. You can see here a famous tenor, Plácido Domingo, pulling people from the rubble where his mother used to live, in Tlatelolco in Mexico City. Only in the General Hospital, 302 people died. 49 of them were residents of diverse specialties. 7 of them were pathology residents. Among them was Ricardo Aguilar, with whom I shared the office in the unit of pathology. We pulled his body from the collapsed residency building. This is a group of survivors after the earthquake. And you can see me in the center wearing a black beard. I don't have that anymore. I have a white one. And the rest of the survivors and some of our professors. After finishing my residency in pathology, and mostly due to the effects of the earthquake, I declined the offer to remain as chief resident and took a generous offer from Dr. Lopez Corella to return as a pediatric pathologist to the National Institute of Pediatrics. a 350-bed facility with the highest levels of sophistication in academic medicine. I remained there a little over 4 years, until almost by accident, I decided to explore the US for a one-year academic visit. I never planned to stay here. Migrating like a neural crest. We are really lucky that no neural crest territories have been banned from migrating. So this visit was facilitated by, you guessed it, Rui Perez Tamayo, who recommended me to Francisco González Cruz. I wanted to see what was going on in this country, and I really wanted to finally learn English. I was able to read adequately and to modestly express my ideas in English, but I did not understand well the spoken English. I had remarried in 1986 to a young doctor and former pathology student, Mayra Alvarez Franco, who started a residency in dermatology under the giant of pediatric dermatology, Ramon Ruiz-Maldonado. After Rui's recommendation, González Cruz called me at home directly and said, "If Dr. Perez Tamayo recommends you, you are accepted." That was great, but the first problem was our total lack of funds. So Rui, better known at that time already in my inner circle as Saint Rui, lent me $500 to purchase my round ticket to Chicago. I visited Children's Memorial Hospital, now Lurie Children's, for a week, arranged to rent a small townhouse in the south side of Chicago. We made all the possible mistakes, the south side of Chicago, and went back to Mexico to prepare the big trip. Meanwhile, Mayra was accepted to spend an academic rotation with Dr. Amy Paller, a good friend now, then chief of pediatric dermatology and now chair of dermatology at Northwestern University. My mentors and colleagues at the National Institute of Pediatrics and at the university were generous enough to authorize me a year abroad. In preparation, we started practicing English, radio, TV, conversation. My 3 children were enthusiastic about the trip. It was a big adventure for all of us. So we left our house. This is Dr. González Cruz, of course. And we left our house in Mexico City without changes, under the care of a friend and running normally, because we were to return a year later. Then the mother of my children did not object, and we arrived at Chicago O'Hare Airport at the end of August in 1990. The big adventure began. O'Hare Airport is a busy place. The 5 of us arrived with 2 pieces of luggage each. And the second mistake we made was to accept the offering of a private taxi driver that offered, after more than an hour showing us around, charged us $150. But the excitement of the arrival made us quickly forget this initial false step. We began setting up our house, using only pillows and cardboard furniture, purchased in a close-by Walgreens store. This was because we did not plan to stay but a year. Our funds were very limited, and there was no reason to spend in expensive items. The same frugality was applied to everything else. A few days later, we bought a computer, our first one, borrowed a small black and white TV, and started work and school. My 3 children, with no command of English whatsoever, they could say hello, how are you, and good morning, but that was it. Began school at the predominantly Latino elementary and junior high school. That was probably a 3rd mistake. And were assigned to an English as a second language course. Chicago has a significant proportion of Spanish speakers, and schools in the Windy City made an effort to teach these kids in their native language, while slowly introducing English, although many never mastered it beyond the basics. That one was one of my first disagreements with the school. I insisted and signed a waiver releasing the school from the responsibility of making my children struggle in a regular English course. But a year later, my kids were fluent in English, and one of them was also advanced in French. For me, however, spoken English was incredibly tough in the first month. And around the 4th week in Chicago, I was so desperate that I told my wife, I think we need to go back. I cannot understand anything. She reassured me and asked me to try for a few more weeks. We tried to speak in English amongst ourselves, watch TV only in English, thought in English, or so we thought. Surprisingly, by the 5th week of our stay, a few synapses connected in my brain, and it was like turning a switch on. The department directed by Francisco González Cruci was relatively small. AP consisted of the chief himself, Dr. Wei Shui, his wife, and 2 junior faculty members, one of them sitting here, Dr. Pauline Chu, to whom my debt and gratitude are incommensurable. Here we see the fellows that graduated from the group of Dr. González Cruci, and Pauline is down below in a white jacket. And here we see them, González Cruci and Pauline, with me in a recent visit to Chicago. I was eager to gain as much experience as possible and started working in Dr. Shui's research lab, studying necrotizing enterocolitis. I also joined the sign-out sessions and started presenting conferences, in particular the brain tumor wall. I wrote as many papers as I could, enjoyed the year tremendously, visiting every week the Art Institute of Chicago, or one of the 2 zoos, or the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. Myra also enjoyed her year and demonstrated enormous talent for clinical dermatology and pediatrics. By July, August of 1991, our mentors appeared happy. The children had made progress in their English. Things were on schedule. It was time to plan the return to Mexico. And then, Dr. Tadanori Tomita, now chief of neurosurgery at Dury Children's Hospital, suggested me to stay here longer. At least for 1 more year, he said. I told him that it was not possible, but that night, discussing with Myra, she mentioned that her mentor, Amy Paller, also asked her the same thing. When our children heard this, they asked us to stay longer, and we started considering it. After all, it was quite an honor to be asked to stay longer, and we had a lot more to learn. Change of plans again. In November, in anticipation of the holidays, my children's mother requested that I send them to Mexico City, quotes, only to spend Christmas and New Year's Eve, unquote. Although this started a highly complex and stressful period for all of us, we accepted and sent the 3 kids to Mexico. They were supposed to return in early January to continue school, but as soon as they arrived in Mexico City, their grandfather removed their passport from my daughter's bag, and my ex-in-laws started mounting a plan to keep them there, against my will, against the will of my children, and against the law. This was an awful period. Myra was pregnant and suffering from intrahepatic cholestasis of pregnancy. The children were illegally retained in Mexico. When I divorced, I was granted legal custody of my children. I felt like a wild animal in a cage. After I managed to bring them back, it was painfully clear that we could not return to Mexico. The children had suffered significant stress, and I could not expose them any longer to this. Therefore, with the pain of abandoning our original plans and commitments, we made the decision to stay in the US. It was the 10th of January of 1992. My youngest daughter, Myra Cecilia, was born in February. Most of the year went by between phone calls and threats from my ex-in-laws because I had recovered my children. By the end of the year, Dr. González Cruci told me that if I could pass the USMLE exams in time, I never took them because I never planned to stay here. He could give me the position of fellow for 1993-94. The American Board of Pathology, I wrote a letter, recognized my 8 years of pathology in Mexico residency and attending time as 1 year. Hey, it's better than the current exchange rate. And my 3 years of research in Chicago as another year. So I had to do 2 more years of formal training to be eligible for the pathology board exam. I took step 1 and 2 of the USMLE on January 19th and 20th, respectively, of 1993. Later, in June, I took the flex exam, now step 3. The final passing scores came a couple of days before the deadline, and in July of 1993, I was appointed Fellow in Pediatric Pathology at the Children's Memorial Hospital. Later that year, and not knowing what was next, I saw an advertisement published in the journal Pediatric Pathology, whose editor-in-chief was precisely Dr. Gonzalez-Cruci at the time. I wrote a letter to Yale, and with my CV attached, explaining that I was neither board certified nor even board eligible, but that I was very interested in academic pediatric pathology. Dr. Gonzalez-Cruci, upon learning of this, told me that he was trying to get me a position as instructor at Northwestern, but that he would support me if Yale contacted him. We both felt the latter was very unlikely. Surprisingly, Yale invited me to visit, present a seminar, and meet with several faculty members. So I gathered my best material. Dr. Gonzalez-Cruci recommended me to talk on giant nevi and neurocutaneous melanocytosis, my long-standing interest since then. So I threw my heart to the front, forward, and ran after it. I was very impressed with Yale. This is the topic of my interest. I was very impressed with Yale. It was a great place. It is a great place. I met a lot of people then, and then I returned to Chicago to continue working, thinking that my invitation was likely to fulfill the search committee's need to comply with some sort of quota of minority or diversity candidates. So I did not call them back. I did not write back. To my surprise, a week later, Jose Costa, head of the AP Pathology at Yale, called me and asked me, "What happened? You didn't like it here?" I felt very stupid. I did not know the etiquette and how to negotiate an academic position. But a couple of months later, and much to my surprise, and everyone else around me, Yale offered me the position, and I became responsible for all pediatric pathology beginning in July of 1994. I launched a program of pediatric and developmental pathology. This is when Myra and I arrived at Yale. The chairman, John Morrow, told me, "You need to create a portfolio, something you can carry with you if you leave." I followed that advice. All beginnings are difficult, and mine at Yale was no exception. At the social level, an anecdote may illustrate these difficulties. We bought our first house in a New Haven suburb, Bethany, Connecticut, very rural setting, and there was a party 2 houses from ours to make the neighbors meet each other. I still could not believe that I had been appointed assistant professor of pathology at Yale. During that outdoors party, organized by our next door neighbor, who was a part-time pastor of Bethany Congregational, an old gentleman in a wheelchair saw me passing by him and asked me, "Are you the janitor?" I smiled and cautiously replied, "Yes." Was that stereotyping or discrimination? Sadly, it was both. The current Orwellian landscape that looms over us now has made me reflect on this with concerns for the future. Professionally, things were not easy either. My colleagues looked at me, wondering too, and among themselves, "Why do we need this guy for?" I was not Ivy League trained, and as a matter of fact, I am a graduate from a, quote, 0-star medical school, as Google informed me a few years later. Furthermore, before my arrival, Yale pathology had a certain culture of "we can do everything," of a diagnostic omnipotence, dismissive of subspecialties that have not been cultivated. But slowly, and for a decade, I was fortunate to gain the confidence of pediatric surgeons and other pediatric specialists, as well as that of my pathology colleagues in the adult services. It was a time of intense work, with significant effort spent in the lab research in a research lab, studying neuroblastoma and other neuroblastopathies combined with diagnostic work in all areas of pediatric and perinatal pathology, including 80 autopsies a year and about 4,000 surgicals, plus teaching responsibilities. Later, I was appointed responsible for the pathology grand rounds, and I took advantage of it by inviting people like Bruce Beckwith, Pepper Daner, David Parham, Pérez Tamayo, Eduardo López Corella, and the late Robert Gorlin from Gorlin syndrome, Alfred Knudsen from the two hit pathogenesis in cancer, and many other giants. I was lucky for this early development of a professional network. Young colleagues, take note. In 2001, one of the proudest moments of my professional life, other than this one, took place when our SPP appointed me editor-in-chief of our cherished journal, Pediatric and Developmental Pathology. That opened a 15-year streak of academic work carrying the written voice of our society, allowing me to learn from and interact with a marvelous editorial board and over 5,500 authors, reviewers, and contributors. This is the last editorial board meeting that I held last year in Seattle. On November 9th of 2002, the most tragic event in my life struck. Myra, my wife, died unexpectedly. Leaving motherless our 10-year-old daughter and the rest of the family. That was a brutal blow. But life only moves forward. My youngest daughter was a constant reminder of the need to continue my path, and I found that concentrating in my work was the only way out of depression. Many friends helped me along this dark period, including colleagues of this society, Bruce Beckwith, Raj Kapoor, Joe Rutledge, who wrote to me, "Just tell us, more calls, less calls." Alba Greco, who I dearly miss now because she was planning to be here. My adopted older sister, who you see here with my mother and my sister visiting in Chiapas. She was at my side frequently and provided much of the needed support that allowed me to continue. She headed a contingent of Argentinians that you see here, including Irene Scheinberg, Marta Cohen, and Betty Davila, to whom I will always be grateful, and they are also my adopted sisters. In 2003, I got approval to hire a second pediatric pathologist, and my former resident, and by then close friend, Eduardo Zambrano, now professor of pathology at Stanford, who also gave me a tremendous amount of support while both of us were mourning for Myra, returned from his fellowship in Boston to work with me. We made an excellent team. 2 years later, a third member, Dr. Carola Sales, joined our group. The program was thriving. After being promoted to associate professor and having 2 colleagues who could cover my absence, I took a sabbatical leave and went to Madrid to work under Manuel Nistal, Chief of Pathology at the Hospital Universitario La Paz in Madrid. This was achieved through the good help of my friend, Dr. Javier Regadera, and one of Nistal's former proteges, and really a person that has made a tremendous amount of contributions to Latin America. Among the many gains of that sabbatical period, I was fortunate to meet a bright resident and now close friend from Galicia, Dr. Adrián Mariño Enríquez. This is Manolo Nistal in a recent SLAPE meeting in Oaxaca with Rui and me, and this is Adrián. He later came to spend some time with us at Yale and is currently a prolific young expert in soft tissue tumor pathobiology working at the Harvard Department of Pathology. Manolo is a widely recognized expert in testicular pathology, and he mentored me on this topic, culminating on the recently published 25 chapters of the latest volume of Perspectives in Pediatric Pathology, which, paraphrasing the Argentinian musical comedy group Les Luthiers, in El Sendero de Warren Sanchez. You can purchase at the stand outside. In 2007, after my Spanish experience and being already promoted to professor of pathology and pediatrics at Yale, several positions of chief in academic departments of pediatric pathology became available. I was invited to visit a few, including the one as chief of the Department of Pathology at the Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh. This was the department directed by the first elected president of our society, Dr. George Vetterman, and previously directed for 25 years by Maud Menton from the Michaelis-Menten equation. The department made great by the also great Eduardo Yunis, another ex-president of the SPP, and tonight I learned that he's the only one previous Latin American president of the SPP, and we both are from Pittsburgh. I never thought of leaving Yale, but decided to accept the honor and opportunity of a new challenge and left Yale in 2008, not without mixed feelings of excitement and trepidation. Almost 9 years later, I'm sure the decision was appropriate. Pittsburgh, the mecca of transplants, is an extraordinary place with a high level of complexity, superb resources, and a committed approach to academic medicine. 9 years later, my group is populated by several prominent experts in various pediatric pathology fields, including, in alphabetical order, Dr. Rita Alaya, an internationally renowned authority in soft tissue tumors, who dared to accept my offer to join our group after a recruitment process that began during our last meeting in Seattle. Dr. Amy Davis, whose expertise in pediatric skin and vascular lesions saved us frequently from errors in those fields, and who is covering for all of us during this meeting. Dr. John Osalik, an expert in pediatric ENT pathology and also in biomedical informatics. Dr. Jennifer Pikarsik, whose prominence in the field of histiocytic lesions is now well established internationally. And Dr. Sarangarajan Ranganathan, see, I can say your name. The COG reviewer for hepatoblastomas, an expert in all fields of pediatric pathology. To all of them, I extend my most sincere and public recognition for their support, their collegiality and friendship. Additional appreciation goes to the group working in my research lab, where we study the biology of congenital melanocytic lesions, a topic that has been at the center of my interest since before leaving Mexico 27 years ago. The full circle to the origins. This brings me back to my family and finally to my mentors. In regard to my family, I am very fortunate in this, and this represents the track record for which I really feel proud. Beginning with my wife, Claudia Salgado, who after a full and successful career as a pediatric nephrologist and also successful researcher in pediatric hypertension and obesity, pediatric obesity, and out of love and commitment, translocated from her native Brazil with her 2 children to Pittsburgh. She started a new career working in our lab. She put together the Gavin Bailey Tissue Repository for Neural Crest Disorders. Here you see the naming of that place, that lab, and Travis Bailey, the father of this patient, is giving us that plaque. This is the largest prospective collection of tissues and other biological reagents from patients with giant nevi and associated conditions. As she is now finishing her first year of pathology resident, I don't know if she's brave or crazy. Frequently, she comes home every night, eager to share cases with me. As a result, I am now brushing up my adult pathology skills. And oh boy, things have changed. We travel extensively, and we live a marvelous life together. My children, each and all successful and productive individuals, and my grandchildren, happy kids in loving families. My 95-year-old mother, here you see Rui visiting my mother a couple of months ago, who still speaks with us every night through Skype and enjoys our happiness. And some adopted family members, including Beatriz and Rui. This is visiting some ruins, Maya ruins in Chiapas a few months ago. The genealogy of histopathology school, my histopathology school, traces its roots to Nobel laureate Santiago Ramón y Cajal, whose student, Pío del Río Ortega, who discovered microbiota, mentored Dr. Isaac Costero Tudanca, who emigrated from Spain to Mexico during the war years and became mentor to Rui. Mexico during that and other periods, in contrast with what we are seeing now in the US, welcomed openly a large number of refugees, gaining with it an injection of intellectuals, artists, and scientists, including Cecilia Ridaura, sitting here, who came in one of the first ships from emigres from Spain to Mexico. In addition to my Spanish and Mexican roots, my school also has strong American roots, beginning with Loren Ackerman, under whom Rui and other important figures in our academic life trained, like Juan Rosay, here we see Juan, and Maria Luisa, with whom I had dinner in Sevilla in one of the European Congress of Pathology a couple of years ago. In summary, my academic genealogy is traced to the above-mentioned figures, Cajal, Pío, Isaac Costero, but then it incorporates Dr. Loren Ackerman, Rui, who was student for both of them, and who mentored Cecilia and Dr. Lopez Correa, and Joaquin Carrillo, who you already heard of at the beginning of the talk. But Loren Ackerman was also the mentor of many seminal figures in our field. This man was his student. He's not a pediatric pathologist. He's Hector Abelardo Rodriguez Martinez, and he was my direct boss in the unit of pathology where I finished my residency. But he was a student, he was a mentor for Dr. Gonzalez Cruzin. And before them, Juan Rosay, Pepper Daner, and Jose Costa, the three of them, were students with Loren Ackerman. All of them have marked my professional life. So I will close with the notion that pediatric pathology is the study of the developing organism living under abnormal conditions. Through it, I have experienced and continue to do so a wonderful long moment of 31 years, shared with mentors, colleagues, and trainees for what I consider myself very lucky, and I thank you all for sharing this other moment with me. is a present. This is a present I made for the society. I pay this. The society did not spend 1 penny on
De mis pesares, ojos de papel volando, negrita de mis pesares, ojos de papel volando a todos los giles que sí.